indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just for the record, all board members are present. I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Schneckloff.
Thank you. Tonight we have people from the field coming tonight to present on youth leadership teams. So I'll turn it over to Courtney Olson.
All right, good evening, everyone. We'll do some quick introductions before we get started. Courtney Olson, Executive Director of Equity and Learning Supports.
I'm Abby Levens. I'm the teacher in charge at McKinley and Garfield.
Leanne Anderson, counselor at Mid-City High School.
Carol Thaw, instructional coach for TLCS at Smart Junior High Middle School.
All right, so in just a little bit, they'll be sharing the work of their buildings that they serve. So if you recall, our youth leadership team started with our work around crisis response, violent prevention about 5 years ago. And within this, we had the district commitment that all students will feel safe, engaged, and connected within our schools. And we knew to accomplish this, student voice was very important because our students need to tell us what they needed to feel safe and engaged in school. And so that's where this work was born. And it's still living today and utilized in a lot of important ways. I'll also make the connection that up here is our growing excellence goals for our district. And this work is tied to any one of these goals that we're working towards when we think about utilizing student voice for change within our system. More specifically, over the last few years, we have had our conditions for learning goal that we know is no longer, and we won't be continuing on with that. But we did have a few years of using that survey that we had to use and focused on emotional safety. And again, it was very important that our youth leadership teams analyzed that data within their building, identified things that they wanted to work towards to make a difference. And you'll hear a little bit more about that in a little bit. But really just want to make the connections that this is an outlet that we will utilize in achieving our goals as a district. So within our district, every building has a youth leadership team, and they are intentionally designed to represent the diversity of the building. So when we think about maybe like a student council or something like that, this is something different where we want to make sure all of our students and voices are represented. They hold monthly meetings, and at these meetings, they're advocating on the behalf of their peers. They use the challenge-based decision-making model that I'll speak a little bit more about to analyze the problem, come up with solutions, and put those solutions in action. And overall, the goal is to make sure that the perspectives of peers are represented and elevated to contribute to the equitable learning environment. We want to hone those leadership skills in our students, so this is an opportunity to do that, as well as just build community within our schools. So we have youth leadership teams at every level from elementary, middle school to high school. And this is the decision-making model that was first introduced to our youth leadership teams at the very beginning. And it's that challenge-based decision-making model. And there are 4 phases: engage, investigate, act, and reflect. And you can see within each of those stages, there are smaller steps. For example, with engage, they want to come up with a big idea. They have to understand who the audience is, what are the essential questions they're going to ask, and ultimately that comes to the challenge that they're trying to solve. Investigate, they're looking for those guiding questions, they do activities, and then interpret the results that they receive. Act is about creating and implementing the solutions that they have identified, but then also evaluating if those solutions were effective, and then reflecting on the overall process. So we do use this, our youth leadership teams, to inform our district priorities. To date, we've collected information from them around our CFL data, portrait of a graduate just last month, coming forward, we're going to be doing an activity with them to capture more information around that. We've got feedback from them around the high school schedule. A lot of our attendance work can flow through there. So we really do use this as an important connection for our work. And so now I'm going to stop talking and pass it on to Cara Fa to start, and she'll speak to her leadership with the youth leadership team at Smart Middle School.
Thank you, Courtney. I have been involved in the youth leadership team since its inception in 2020. And when we first established it, we got this team together, and the first thought was, how are we going to make sure that we have the right voices sitting at the table, and then what necessarily do we have to have them do? And where we found that we get the most bang for our buck is if we kind of think of them as an extension of like our PBIS and our BSAT. So if we're talking about something here, and then they say, well, how do the kids feel about that? Then I know that comes to me, and then I take it to the students and I ask them, how do you feel about this? What do you think? This is what we're thinking, and then I capture their ideas and then I feed it back. So if we're talking about something at BSAT and we're saying, I wonder about this, then I can give the student perspective live from them. Here's what they told me. Yes, that's true. No, that's not true. And we can kind of use that to inform us with that. Okay, building leadership team, the building student achievement team. So guiding, we follow the growing excellence plan, and we're trying to make sure that we are hitting our marks with that. And then so incorporating student voice into why aren't students, for us right now, we're working to get kids to class. Why do kids not want to go to class? So that we can try to fix that. One of the things they told us is we need more times to interact with each other. And so we took that and put it into PD and said, how do you have students interact with each other? Okay, could you try to incorporate that more? Because if they want to spend time in the hallways with their friends for social time, can we build a social component of learning into your lessons? So kind of bridging that gap between what they're saying and they're wanting and what we need to do as instructional professionals as well. Just last week, we were looking at our PBIS incentive store, what can students do, and we weren't getting very good buy-in, and we said, what do we need? I know, because I've been teaching junior high for a long time, kids like chips, drinks, whatever, but what else? That's not enough. And so I said, you have money, what do you want? And they started talking like tattoos, things that I wouldn't have thought about. One of the most innovative ones that I found myself shopping for were croc gibbets. And I would not have thought, okay, get a bulk order of croc gibbets and have those available for them. So it was just interesting to get that because it helps take my thinking to the next level, and it brings them in as well. And I know they appreciate it. The students that are involved continue to be grateful for the opportunity. When I was thinking about this, since I've been doing this, at the end of each meeting, every month, there's always a student that stops and is like, thank you for having me. Thank you for this. This was fun. And they'll follow up when they see me in the hall. And as the instructional coach, I'm not in a designated space very often. So when they see me, a lot of times they're like, when's our next meeting? That to me tells me they're excited about the work we're doing. They want to come and do it. And occasionally some of the more innovative ways that we've approached it is we had a couple of children that left, and so we were down on our numbers, and we thought, how do we want to handle this? Who do we want to bring somebody in? And so we had a meeting coming up, and I just said, give me the names of friends that you think would be good to help with this work. And they absolutely loved that. And those were some of the best recommendations we got, is when they brought their friend in and we tried it out. And then a couple of the other kids were like, oh, some people brought friends, not everybody did. And then they're like, can we do that again? I'm like, awesome. All right. Going through with this, giving them the voice and empowering them to choose who's coming in here as long as they understand the vision with that. Another one of my most powerful stories, this year we had 6th graders coming to us, and the 6th graders coming from the elementary to the middle school, we can use that to inform. We will get the names of who maybe was involved, but we don't have to put them on. So we thought about it, and we looked at it, and we came through, we talked to the teams, and we got this group together, and one of the girls raised her hand, and she said, I just have to tell you, last year, my best friend was on this, and I was really jealous. I didn't get to do it, and I'm just so happy that you see those things in me, and I get to do this year. And I'm like, yes, that tells me that, yes, we got the right person here, and we're going to get some great work from you for 3 years because that means a lot to you. And putting on my teacher hat, then I'm like, yes, that's when I can start teaching a child. They want to be here. I'm not trying to convince them. Then they're invested in the work. And that was just awesome to get to see and affirming that, yes, we're doing the right thing. We're getting the right kids there, and they appreciate the opportunity that we're giving to them. Currently on our slide up there, when we looked at our data last year from the Conditions for Learning, the students really were focused on the adult-to-student relationships. And they see and say things like, this is a tough place to work. Our teachers are really stressed. What can we do to help that? And so they chose to work on the adult-to-student relationship construct, and completely on their own, they came up with the idea of what if we had an award that we could give them and to thank them for being a teacher. What can we do with this? So we formatted an award, and when we get together at the beginning of every month, we sit down and we're like, okay, the expectation is that everybody writes an award for a teacher. Excuse me. And so they write that out. And then we ask them, do you want us to give that to them, or do you want to give it to them? And so our bottom photo, that was one of our friends that was like, no, I want to give this to them. We give them stickers and markers and things so that they can decorate it and make it personal. And then they go and either we present it to the teacher or they present it to the teacher, and it's received as you would expect. Everybody's always like, wow, thank you, whatever. They're very excited to get it. But probably the most fun for me is our expectation is that we're not going to repeat people until we make sure that we've gotten an award for everybody, because everybody deserves to be thanked. We're going to support them. And it's getting kind of dicey at this point in time in the year because we've got some of those names up there that people maybe are like, okay. But then to hear the kids when we're talking about it, I'm like, well, we know these are the ones we have to focus on. You know, these ones have been taken. They're like, oh, you know what, I can do that. And they're really thinking about it, and they're looking at that. Instead of choosing the easy choice, they're choosing, okay, I can do this, it'll make a positive difference. And so for me, again, I'm like, yes, we're teaching you something on how to make things better, to acknowledge somebody and go and say something. So that has been one of how we've been handling it since my involvement for the past 5 years. It continues to be a highlight of my work with all the things I do. It's like, okay, it's youth leadership team. This is awesome. And it fills my bucket, and I know it fills the kids' bucket.
Thank you, Kara. And now Abby will talk about McKinley and Garfield.
All right, so this is my first year at Garfield, but we're doing very similar things at both buildings. When the 3 elementaries closed a couple years ago, the dynamics and the demographics at both of those buildings really shifted. So I know last year we completely revamped the youth leadership team at McKinley to make sure that that was replicated in our youth leadership team. So that last year was really great to really see how some of our new to McKinley kids and the kids that had been at McKinley kind of came together, and it gave them more of a common purpose. It gave some of those newer kids an opportunity to really take ownership of maybe something they didn't feel like was their school yet. So that was really important. And the way we really started doing that was teaching them our expectations. And then from there, they got to reward other kids. So they would hand out, they just call them paws. So anytime they see a kid, being respectful, responsible, or ready to learn, teachers can hand out a paw, which they get put in a drawing. So we made a different color paw so they would know that it came from a student on the youth leadership team, and it just kind of made it a little more powerful for them so that they could see that they, were making this little kindergartner's day in the hallway, these 4th and 5th graders. We kind of took a different approach this year, and we kind of took a step back and focused on the learning. They are such awesome kids, and they always want to do something. They want to hand things out. They want to go help kids. They want to do all the things, which is so great. But we really took a step back and started teaching them, having conversations around what does it mean to be a leader? How can you be a leader when there are a lot of adults in your building? But it doesn't always have to be the adults leading the conversation or leading these initiatives. It can also be, some of these 9-year-olds who still have really, really great ideas. They just don't always, because they are so young, have the opportunity to share that. So our first semester of youth leadership team this year, we tied it in with our Character Strong curriculum, which is our SEL curriculum that we fully implemented this year. So each month is a different character trait. So for example, last month was perseverance. And there is a section in Character Strong where when you go in, there is a whole topic devoted to elementary leaders. So it's just building off of what they're already doing in the classroom. It's just a couple steps further. So they get what everyone else is getting, but then they just get a little bit extra, and they learn how to acknowledge that in other kids. So they got to pick a few kids in each month so far. Like this month is honesty. So we have our first meeting tomorrow where they're going to kind of get in their head, okay, who are my classmates? Who are these younger kids who are always really honest? And at the end of the month, they'll get to present them with the Honesty Award for Character Strong for the month. The first month, we had a little learning to do. It can't just be your brother or sister or your neighbor. So again, they're in elementary school, right? So we did really, really have to focus on the learning and being a leader and not just choosing the people that maybe you want to be around or you enjoy being around. And what we're really tying that into, our focus, it says student to student and student to adult relationships. Then I'm just going to really confuse everyone and say that our big focus is actually emotional safety. But through conversation, we've really found that the way they feel the safest is having somebody, whether it's another kid, whether it's an adult in the building. So we're focusing on building relationships. We're focusing a lot on trust. A lot of our kids don't necessarily trust adults that they don't know really well. So we're really, really focusing on how to build those relationships. How can we take these traits of empathy and respect and honesty and build that into a solid relationship with a friend, with maybe someone who's not a friend. You don't have to love everybody, but you can still show respect and be empathetic towards adults and other kids at our school. So those have been our biggest tweaks, I guess, this year, is really taking that first semester, which some of our returning kids were not excited about right away. They wanted to start immediately by doing something. So we did some gratitude buckets for our staff, which was great. And then now starting this semester, they're going to pair up. And so each student team has a group of 2 to 3 kindergarten, first or second grade kids that they are going to work with on letter sounds or number identification, just little things during their recess time. So they're choosing to take some of their recess time a couple times a week and go in and work with these kids and kind of show that they have really instilled these traits in themselves and hopefully build some other connections that way as well. So they are very, very excited about that. I've heard about that the last 3 weeks. So we're excited to get that started. Tomorrow's our next meeting to really kind of figure out who their partner is, and that's a big deal. So just getting those relationships going has been our biggest focus this year, and we're going to hope that that continues throughout the year and into next year as well, keeping the majority of our team.
Thank you, Abby. And now Leanne is going to talk about Mid-City's youth leadership team.
So I became the youth leadership team facilitator at Mid-City when I returned 2 years ago. And when we first started the team, when I first got back there, well, Mid-City, if you know anything about Mid-City High School, our population is extremely diverse. And we have a lot of our students that come to Mid-City have not had positive school experiences. They've not had positive adult relationships, student-to-student relationships. It's just kind of been a bunch of negative things. So when I first started the team, it was kind of small at first, I must say, and but it has built, and now I have 15. I think I'm over what I'm supposed to be, but I have even more that are can I be on the team? So it's really grown into something extremely positive, and what it has all been based on is student-to-student relationships. A little bit of staff involvement as well, because as Abby, I think, said, the relationship piece is what makes the kids feel emotionally safe. And so many kids that come to Mid-City don't have that emotional safety at all in so many ways. So some of the things that we do, now at Mid-City also, we don't have a student government, or we don't have a bunch of other teams. We don't have a lot of activities. We don't have proms, we don't have homecoming, so my youth leadership team is well, we want Mid-City to feel like a special high school and a special place for everybody, for all of our students. So we get very involved in the Student Hunger Drive, and that turns into a lot of different activities with the Student Hunger Drive, as far as they do contests among advisories, and they get their advisory teachers involved, and it kind of involves the whole school. They do, this year, a big plug has been redoing a lot of bulletin boards in our building. I know we're high school, but at least these kids like to do little crafty things, and all the bulletin boards have been about emotional safety. We right now have one with a melting snowman that says "Don't have a meltdown," and there's a bunch of snowflakes around with different things you can do if you're having a bad day or whatever. So it's kind of things like that. One girl made a bulletin board I really liked. I had these little just cards that would say, have a great day, keep a smile on your face, you can do it, positive affirmations. And so she made envelopes all over the bulletin board and said, take what you need. and I mean, she has to fill this thing like constantly. So, and you see kids going by and they'll take a card out for take what you need. So they're really aware of, I think, their peers and what their peers need. And we have representation from, you know, 9th through 12th grade. We have very shy kids. We have very outgoing kids. It's very, our meetings are, you know, I have to really kind of rein them in sometimes, but they do a great job of, you know, knowing kind of what our school needs for our kids and everybody to feel emotionally safe and accepted at Mid-City. So it's been just such fun. Our Harvest Fest was huge. I mean, we didn't have a homecoming, so the kids are like, well, can we at least have some kind of festival? So we threw together a festival. The staff all got really involved. I mean, they had a haunted maze out in the little barn, in our barn. So I mean, it was just really, it's really cool. The thing they're coming up with and doing more recently, we are going to be meeting with Connie. Oh, I hope I say her last name right. Doubles. On Thursday, we're meeting with her about our food service. So some of them brought up to me. They said that they've been to other high schools, and they're like, "Why is our lunch so like?" It's I don't want to say elementary, like that's a bad thing, but elementary, like portions are very small, and I know it's because I explained to them we don't have like a kitchen. So our food is kind of brought over, and they said, well, do they understand though that for some of our students here, this might be their only meal of the day, because we have a part of our population are unaccompanied youth, or they just families just don't have a lot. So they created a survey, sent it out to students, to all their peers, to find out what their peers thought about lunches and what they would like to see. And so Connie's been really gracious to come over, and she wants to meet with them and talk to them about maybe what we could do better, what could we offer more of, or just to make it, because like they said, I mean, a meal would probably get kids to school if they know they're coming in and they're getting, what I mean, full bellies kind of mean a lot too. We got to meet those basic needs. So I'm kind of proud that they wanted to take that on, and they've been really good about knowing that you can't just come at somebody and like be angry about it and be like, we demand a better lunch. You have to like you have to talk about it and like find solutions and like come together. And we have the urban farm, and so Miss Pester from the urban farm is going to also come, and we're going to talk about, well, what kind of vegetables can we grow? Can we like do something with the urban farm and bring in some of the produce from that for more fresh food to offer our students? So that's kind of our latest take on that we're going to have. And of course we got Valentine's Day coming up, so I'm sure we'll do something fun for that. But so that's kind of a wrap up of what Mid-City does.
Well, thank you, Leanne. It's such a gift, like listening to all the incredible work that you guys are doing alongside your students. I think we've heard many examples of building community within your schools, elevating your students as leaders, and really letting their voice drive what are the problems we need to solve, that so we do keep growing excellence every day in our schools. So we will pause there and take any questions that you guys have for us.
Director Beck.
First of all, thank you for sharing with us the things that each of your schools is doing. It's really neat to see how the same idea is so diverse in different places, partly due to the ages of the students, but also just, it really lends itself to the personality of the school, right? I guess my question is, and this actually would apply to all of you. I initially thought of it when I was thinking of Mid-City, but how does student turnover affect your ability to do these things? Because I know in some situations we have students who move schools frequently and come into schools relatively frequently. And so I'm just wondering, like, what are some of the ways that you guys have you had to deal with that a lot? Is that a big problem for these youth leadership teams? And if so, what are some of the things that the students are doing or can do to help sort of mitigate that sense of, here I am in another building, that to help build that sense of belonging?
Okay, I think I understand what you're saying. So, you mean like when new students come to our building, kind of thing? Like if
Yeah,
we
because
like
I
when
know with Mid City, like sometimes students come in and then they leave before, they don't necessarily complete all 4 years there.
okay,
Or at the
you're meaning
elementary,
like an actual youth leadership team student or just any student?
any student really,
Okay.
because to me, part of this sense of belonging, the
Sure.
student-to-student relationships, the number of students you have that are transient is going to make a big difference for sort of the atmosphere of the school and how the youth leadership team can actually function. So I guess it would equally apply to both.
So I was thinking of, because that is something that we're wanting to take on a little more, is like, because we do get a lot, I mean, whenever we get a lot of students in and out, but when they come in, our youth leaders want to be the ones to take them around and show them the school, and just kind of be that first like friendly face, I guess you could say, that they can meet. So I mean, that would be, I guess, the transitioning to our school is something that I know they really want to take on and take ownership of that.
Our kids at McKinley do the same thing, which is really fun. It's cute to listen to their little conversations with each other. So we have a little binder or a little folder that they all have, and it's just the places that they have to show the student, just different spots in the building. And then we try and pair them up. We only have 3rd through 5th grade on our youth leadership team. But, for example, if it's a 4th grader, we're going to try and have a 4th grader from our team be that person. So it's still someone, maybe not in the same class, but they'll see at lunch or recess or something like that. One of our biggest challenges this year is at McKinley, we have our newcomer program, which is amazing. But it's been a little bit of a struggle because a lot of these kids are coming in and don't speak English. So we do have a couple kids on our youth leadership team who are also bilingual. So we've really tried to pair them up regardless of age, just so that they are the ones kind of encouraging them that even though not everyone may understand, you verbally yet, that we do have people and it is a safe place to be. And so that's kind of been our biggest thing with kids coming in throughout the school year, because in elementary it is fairly often that we have kids in and out. So
I'll take the next part. Very similarly, our counselors are aware. Our counselors are involved in YLT, so they know who our students are. So if we're getting somebody and they kind of look and they think, okay, yes, we can do this here, this person can go with this. And some of our students, we've noticed with ours, at least junior high, it's kind of an awkward spot where some of them don't necessarily want to be identified in that way. So are you comfortable doing that? Yes or no? We have a new student. We have some backup plans in place. Additionally, we have not had a ton of turnover for students that have been YLT that have gone to other schools. We have lost a few. They have not gone to Davenport schools with this, because in the back of my mind, my plan is always, here's who we have, because in my mind, if you are identified as a leader here, your voice is important, and we've spent time and opportunity with you. I'd want the incoming school, if it was one of our own, to know about that and to at least have a decision. That opportunity hasn't presented itself yet, but it is something in the back of my mind.
Anyone else have a question? Director Hayes.
That would help. Okay. Thank you all for your participation and what you're doing. It builds a lot of unity within the kids as well as pride. I know someone said you had about 15 participants, but Kara, you had mentioned the opportunity for individuals to ask their friends to come if someone fell out. Do you have a cap to the number of individuals in your group?
The guidance is we can get like 5 to 7 each grade level. So depending on where we are, we had 8 eighth graders that came back to us last year, 7th graders that came back to us as 8th grade, and then we lost one right away. and then we lost another one. And so then we're like, okay, are we okay sitting at 6? Because then looking at it, then that gives us 9 for the other grade levels. It kind of every year it depends. If I was talking to you and it was last year and we just had the 7th and 8th grader, then yes, I would have more opportunity for that. This year, splitting it over the 6, we're staffing that, we're filling them a little bit smaller. We're aiming for about 6 each grade level so that way we've got a pad. But really, we want 4 to 5 so that we can hit that 15 core group.
Okay, thank you.
Director Barnes.
Thanks for sharing this great work with us. How do you all go about notifying the next school about these leaders who have been so focused on belonging? I mean, it would seem to me this work is a little bit different than some of the leadership positions, which might revolve more around popularity. You've been so intentional about thinking about student belonging. I love the example of non-native speakers being matched with non-native speakers, even if it's not at grade level. How are you notifying when a student transitions from elementary school to middle school and middle school to high school? And how can we use this special emphasis to build community and inclusiveness throughout the entire district?
I know elementary to middle school, the way we've done it in the past is we just have kind of a Google sheet just with pretty much all of our kids. You know, if they're on any kind of a tier plan or anything like that, just kind of notifying, you know, what supports they might need. And we ended up adding youth leadership team. There were a couple kids who we really felt they were kind of on the bubble, right? Like they could have made some really great decisions or some not so great decisions, and being on youth leadership team really gave them that ownership to where we felt that they had a much better year because they got to participate in these things. So like, for example, for that student, we emailed the counselor personally and we're like, hey, I don't know who's in charge of this at your school, but it was a huge asset for this student to be on it. And we tend to just give a list once we know which school they're going to, just so that they're aware that they did it. Obviously not that they always have to be picked again. You know, when you go from elementary to middle, you can't assume everyone's going to be on it, but just a heads up that they were and that it was something they enjoyed, and so that they have the opportunity.
Additionally, we do participate in YLT facilitator training twice a year. There's one in September, early October, and then there's one usually April, late April, early May. And at that one, a lot of times making connections with who it is. And there's not a lot of turnover in the facilitators. I know there's a large portion of them that do the same job that I do for TLCS, so I know them. And so we just say, hey, connect, let me have that, like, who are the names to go this way? A lot of what Abby said, so that we're passing up and receiving in.
Well, mine aren't necessarily going to another. Most of mine just stay with us and they graduate. So my encouragement to my YLT members is to put it on their resume. It's definitely a resume builder, or even applying for colleges. You know, it's like you've been a leader in our building, and so that's kind of where they take it. So that's where my kids go.
Director Potts.
I guess this would mainly be a question for Kara, because we've switched now at our junior highs with a middle school model with teams at each grade level. How do you see, because the purpose and goal of that is to create smaller learning communities and more knowledgeable of the students and the teachers and all that middle school stuff. How do you see the leadership teams playing off, working with, integrating with the building teams, the grade level middle school teams?
Good question. First of all, we went to the teams when we started looking at the names. The first thing we did was we looked at who we had that we knew, who was identified from elementary school. So, okay, here's what we have. And then the next thing, we just kind of put that list over here, like, this is what we know. And then we went and we sat and had a very informal conversation with the staff in the teams. And we said, tell me, if you had to choose a youth leader, and you're thinking about somebody that's got a good voice, that, you know, I'm always asking for somebody, give me somebody that school works for, and then on the opposite end, give me somebody school doesn't work for, because I want to hear from both those kids to see where the commonality is. And so we had those conversations like, okay, what's going through this? And then my role in that was I just sat and listened and started jotting notes down, because just get them talking, the teachers and the team will start talking, And I'll notice when I start to hear a couple of names that I'm like, okay, that's somebody I'm going to be looking for to go. Then we kind of take those back and we look through and we say, all right, these names came up. What do we know? We run our stuff. And then we also talk to the kids. Like, is this something you've been identified for? Would you like to opt in and participate? Here's what our expectations are for you. Now, your next step, how do we take that back? We haven't gotten there yet. We, this year, I think it's a great opportunity. We have some opportunities to do it. We just haven't bridged it yet. We're still, our 8th grade, man, they're just a delightful group. They've been together for 2 years. We're still working to build those connections with the 6th and the 7th so that we can feed it back to them. They are. And so making sure that they're, and when Abby spoke about that, that was one of the things we were very intentional about. We looked at what elementary schools they were coming from, because we wanted to make sure that we had different perspectives. Specifically because I've been at SMART for a long time, I wanted a Monroe perspective because your building doesn't exist there anymore, but it still is in you, and I want you here speaking from a Monroe perspective. So making sure that we have that, we're focused more on getting them connected with each other so that we can get to what Leanne's been talking about. And it just takes a little time with them to, okay, you can talk. They're still the 6th graders, man, there's 5 of them and they raise their hand and I love it. But then I'm like, you could just talk to me. It's okay. So, the 8th graders, then they're like, did you get my note? Yes, I got it, pal. We're fine. So building that so that it's very just genuine, going back and forth. So that's a great opportunity. And I'm going to make a note of that to take back. We're just not there yet.
Director Poston.
Well, thank you for what you're doing in your buildings. And I like the idea of the student to student relationships. I think a lot of times, especially in the junior high level, those kids really don't want to listen to adults as much as they'd like to listen to their peers. Do you feel that this has helped in any way as far as attendance, that when you get the relationship between the students, that the students feel like more inclusive and they want to come to school? Have you noticed any of that or not?
Specific to me? Okay.
All of you. I guess I'm leaning more towards junior high and just the relationships there.
Okay. I just want to make sure before I jumped in. So, I apologize. So I haven't seen it transfer that way yet. However, what I have seen is the kids that never miss a meeting. And for the most part, I can tell who's like, okay, because if all of a sudden, if you come and you're like, man, I have this one thing here, I can't miss it. Like we had somebody that was preparing for like a solo fest and they said, I am really sorry. I'm like, no, that is the most important thing. They're coming to this. And then or on the flip side, then if I see somebody, I'm like, hey, we had a meeting today and I know I gave you your pass. I know that we reminded you about it and you weren't in the meeting. Is everything okay? Then depending on how they talk, like, okay, maybe there was something with their peers to go with that. I haven't gone so far as to dig into the data to see does it impact their overall attendance with this, but I can usually gauge where we kind of are, like how we're feeling about school based on their willingness to participate, if that makes sense. Because when there's the kids, like when Abby's like, man, they want this, because they're all, especially the 8th graders, they're always telling me they've got long lists and they have got some high taste, with this. And I'm like, okay, we'll work on that. I'll work on it to go with that. When they stop talking, then I also know that that's probably my time to like lean in and wrap around, see what's going on with this. And if I can't get it, do we have somebody you're connected with there as well so that we can kind of help you? But I haven't looked into that more.
And I think these relationships are so critical, especially when they become adults. So if, what you're doing here now is getting these students to participate, learn, solve problems. And again, that's going to be huge for them later on in life.
Additionally, I'm going to tap on this one more. One of the things that we will do in the spring, and we just talked about it, is we go outside with chalk, and they're always like, oh, it's so elementary. And I'm like, yes, that's why you're all smiling and so happy. But when we have parents coming into the building, we will take a group of them out there, and we talk about, like, what should you put on the wall, like the sidewalk? Because can't, if there's 10 of them, I can't stand and watch all of them with this to make sure that all of our messages are appropriate. And in middle school, that can be a concern, but they're always out there, and they're, like, we're happy you're here, going through through those sorts of things. So a lot of times, you know, going that to encourage other people, they want that. And it's just what I found in listening here. We just have to kind of go back, massage it a little bit, just the nature of a middle school child. And I'm getting to live that personally. I have a middle schooler at home too, and it tests me all the time with my training that I've done this, like, okay, deep breath.
Director Ward, do you have any questions? I don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, not at this time. Thank you.
Anybody else again? I- Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm glad that this is still continuing. I understand the need for continuity. You know, this team next year will be the team, but I also fear that somebody gets left out. So I'm not so much into the continuity of it, but that people have opportunity if that's something they choose to do. But anyway, I found it great that we are still doing this. You know, sometimes we do something and then it just falls by the wayside. So thank you for all the time you put into this. Anything else? Okay, thank you. And with that, could I have a motion to adjourn? Second? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.